not going to find these ideas anywhere. This kind of insider information that you can build an empire on.
Little to no upside and plenty of downside is often how I describe the affordable housing business.
This could be yours. This fine deal could be yours for $933,000.
What would make this more desirable is to make it less expensive.
Welcome to another edition of the Real Estate Anonymous podcast. Today, Elliot White, Eric Weatherholtz, and America's favorite freeloading broker, Brett Moss, are going to get into a wonderful deal in Chicago. Brett has already promised for next week that he's going to get a fade, so stay tuned for that. Fade, maybe some necklaces. We're digging into a 20-unit deal that seems to be in a neighborhood surrounded by street entrepreneurs. It's being pitched as distressed. We're going to talk a little bit about infamous Chicago housing projects, and I'll pitch you an Airbnb idea that is surely going to up your neighborhood. Stay tuned. All right. Welcome, everyone. Another edition of the Real Estate Anonymous podcast. Elliot White here with Brett Moss and Eric Weatherholtz, two fine gentlemen. I'm fighting a cold today, or allergies, or might be dying from another stroke. But here, happy to be here. I had a Airbnb idea that I wanted to pitch the two of you that I floated on Twitter a while ago. But here, Brett, let's see how you feel about this one.
All right.
We are going to we're going to find a nice neighborhood in Orlando, presumably a neighborhood you live in with all your broker cash. We buy a home in a nice neighborhood. We then openly encourage parties. We only rent to groups of like 8 or more. We install a stripper pole. We supply free kegs with every rental, big sound system. You really make it a spot that people can just go totally fucking ham. And you drive down, you create a nuisance house.
Mirrored coffee table.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Exactly. So you can check if you have food in your teeth. And you drive down the value of all of the other homes in the neighborhood. You just create this like horrible space, and you drag down the property values of Becky and Chad's homes. And then you buy them at a discount, and then you shut down your Airbnb and you wait for the property market to restabilize, and then you sell.
See, you're not going to find these ideas anywhere.
Right, except this podcast.
This is why you listen.
Except this podcast.
This is why you listen.
Except this podcast.
This kind of insider information that you can build an empire on.
I think the kids call it alpha. I think that's what that is.
Without a lot of beta. Well, I don't know if it's too early. I'm in on the real estate. Is it too early? Too soon? I'm not sure.
I like it. I think it has a certain entrepreneurial vibe to it that really, it's really something.
Well, you got to make sure it's not in an HOA. That's my one thing that we got to be cognizant of.
I've been looking at some deals, some fractured condo deals where you can buy like 180 of the 194 units and you control 100% of the HOA. And most of me immediately says, I can get those other 14 units because I'm just going to jam them with special assessments. I'm going to do a property, needs assessment. And then the more reasonable part of me is like, you could just make a living another way. You don't have to like jam 14 homeowners and push them out of the way. Things aren't that bad. You can just find another deal.
Or you could just like make up rules. Like Tuesday, everybody in the association has to wear a beekeeper's hat.
I should. Ooh, yeah.
Beekeeper's hat. Yeah. I like that idea.
I like that. So rather than jamming them with money, you just create an insane living environment for them. Yeah.
I'm all in. I'm all in.
This is Nudist good. Thursdays.
Yeah. So basically today's lesson is going to be how to terrorize your neighbors.
Karma shouldn't be a problem for anyone that executes on this strategy. It should work out great.
That's mainly what we're talking. Just remember, this was Brett Moss who came up with this idea.
Nope. But I'm a buyer. It's just not my idea.
You'll be a silent partner.
I am very silent.
So, gents, I spent this week out on the West Coast meeting with some LPs. We are gearing up for another fund. Probably after the first of the year, we'll start raising. We're having some soft conversations now, but that sort of took over my whole week. But it was nice. I took my wife out with me. We did a mix of tourist stuff and work stuff. Got in late last night and waited an hour and 20 minutes for our bags. Logan baggage claim is somehow horrible. I don't know. Do you guys know, is it the baggage? Does each airline have their own baggage people, or does the airport just have like general baggage guys? I don't know who to yell at, I guess is what I'm asking.
I would say it's the.
I'd just start yelling.
Just yell.
I did that last night, like a crazy person.
Yeah, just see who responds. And then even if it's not their fault, you can yell at them. But the name of this airline shall remain nameless until it says.
Oh, no, it's JetBlue. Yeah. We were 3 hours delayed, and then I show up, and it's an hour and 15, 20 minutes for us to get our bags. And JetBlue is just Spirit Airlines painted a different color. And the people who pretend that's not the case are just lying to themselves. It is a flying toilet. It's like a Greyhound bus with wings just shuttling the dregs of society back and forth. It is one tier above Frontier and Spirit. And I every time I have to fly JetBlue, I always think it's not going to be this bad. And then every time I get on, it's as bad as I remember. And I sit in the seat and I think I'm never going to do this again.
A gentleman I know that's not used to flying commercial got annoyed with this process at the end of the trip. Bags wouldn't come out, so he, a bit overserved, took a ride on the conveyor belt inside the thing to see what was going on and to start raising hell. And this was in at that big airport in Denver. And the thing, apparently, is like you get inside there and it turns into like Willy Wonka factory, and it's like shooting him, all over the place inside this thing, like a gerbil maze, high-speed gerbil maze. And then he gets tackled by TSA. Anyway, not recommended. He's on do not fly list now, and also did not find his bag.
Do not fly for behavior on the ground seems like cruel and unusual punishment. They should just like, there should be a fine.
The sentence doesn't fit the crime there, I'd say. There's got to be some sort of law in that. But we can go back to a prior episode. Is that in Napoleonic law by any chance?
The Napoleonic Code?
The Napoleonic Code.
Yeah, all baggage handling related process and procedures stem from the Napoleonic Code.
Yeah. And at least if you're on the ground, that seems like a local offense versus a federal offense.
All right, this is, let's get to business. What's the deal of the day?
The deal of the day, and I think Mr. Moss is going to drive and pull this out. We got us a slightly distressed multifamily deal in Chicago.
Pleasantly distressed.
Pleasantly distressed.
Partially distressed.
Chicago is a great city. There's been a bit of a theme on here. We've done some great American cities that have their own problems. We touched on New Orleans, a place that I love, Detroit, a remarkable place, Chicago, phenomenal city. The trouble for me investing in Chicago, and I think we've talked about this here before, is the property tax environment is, to an outsider, and I think to a lot of outside investors, it's really, really unpredictable in a way that's hard to get comfortable buying, for example, distressed multifamily. I am confident there are tax consultants in Chicago who can get you some little bit of comfort, but in general, and more specifically, I'm really talking about Cook County, which is the bulk of Chicago. It's a corrupt, bankrupt place, and they will, look to squeeze a dollar out of every property owner they can. So we haven't moved on anything in Chicago, despite me being generally a fan of the city. What we got here, I think it's 20 units.
Yep, we've got 8250 South Racine Ave, 20 multifamily units south of downtown Chicago. We've got, at least it's a concrete block. The units have been recently turned and received new appliances, but all are in original condition. So we've got distress and a value add play here. Give the people what they want.
Can it be both?
It's absolutely can be both.
You can have just a completely distressed deal that also somehow is, I guess, warranting of a value add reposition. Like, isn't the real value just stabilizing this thing?
Yeah, I think there's a math exercise that goes into kind of, does it make sense to spend $1 to make $6 kind of deal from a cash on cash perspective, $6.50.
Brett, I didn't get into real estate to do math. Okay, bud.
Well, that I'm just repeating what somebody else told me. I'm not sure if that's true or not. And more importantly, I don't even know how you calculate a cash on cash return.
What is a yield on cost? So we've got a kind of a distressed deal. We, funny enough, bid on one of these where the broker said the price is 50 million. And I said, how about 20? And he said, go ahead and write the offer.
Brokerage is easy. Going back to last week's episode, super easy.
Yeah. I think the lesson here is that you should never think twice about just lowballing someone because it might work out.
Yeah. So this is one of my sayings in life. The worst they're going to say is no.
And that someone is Brett Moss.
Wow.
So if you have the shot, go ahead. Cut him down.
Me?
All right. What do we know about this thing?
Well, 1931 vintage, 827 average square feet. And we've got some retail here too, which I'm not sure what this means, but maybe that's the value per square foot. I don't know. I don't know what that means, but 52% occupied. So they have 11 units out of the 20 occupied.
Well, it says in the footnote, current tenant has been sent to an eviction attorney.
Yeah, that seems like I would definitely be underwriting that rent.
So it's not actually 0% occupied. It's occupied by someone who doesn't want to pay.
Or has zero ability to pay.
Right.
100% occupied.
It is 100% physically occupied with 0% economic occupancy. This type of thing, you guys may remember we talked about Newberry Street, that kind of 6-pack of deals where it was, the residential above the retail. And one of the things that really stood out there was Eric was talking about a savvy operator can kind of buy and stabilize the multi and look at that as the more secure cash flow. But they can, if they're really good, they can reposition the retail, which holds a smaller total square footage, but can have an outsized impact on the rent. I don't know that this deal is particularly in a retail corridor, but if you buy that you can stabilize the multi, Brett, do you think there's some, does the value come? I know there's some value obviously from leasing up this retail, but if you're looking at this, where are you going to focus your efforts?
Not buying it. The next deal. That's the smart aleck response. I would, it's basis at the end of the day. And, I would focus on getting it leased up, which if it's 50% leased, that leads me to believe that the asking rents are too high or nobody wants to live here or a combination of both.
Eric, what's your gut tell you about this kind of thing?
Well, it's a cool looking building. It's the city of Broad Shoulders. The map, isn't doing a whole lot of justice. I can't tell the scale. I see Whole Foods has my attention.
Good, but I thought I saw that too. Where do you see that? Oh, down here. Yes. Okay, I'm back. So that's a great point, Eric. That's a really good point.
Now, if it's a map of the United States, it's probably not that important. But if it's a map of a 3-block part of Chicago, then we can talk.
So here's the Google.
Here's where Chicago is. That doesn't help you out much.
So let's scroll out here. So you're way south, which on a headline deal, the south side of Chicago is traditionally not the best, but there's a Whole Foods here, which for me is a big deal.
You may also be so far south that you're past whatever part of Chicago.
Oh yeah, you're south and east of Midway. So that's exactly right, Elliot.
Oh, yeah, because they always put the best neighborhoods next to the airport.
Well, Eric, isn't that true in Atlanta?
Yeah, everybody wants to live in College Park.
It's beautiful this time of year.
All the garden spots. Well, let's go back to the building. I think the building, do we have any space plans? Because the exterior of the building's cool. Kind of a 1920s, 2-story urban core type design.
Yeah, let's go back to the building here.
It is a cool looking building. I'll give you that. Does not have central AC. Eric said something we were talking about a Fort Lauderdale property, that if the business plan is to raise rents on people who aren't too terribly excited about having their rents raised, it's probably not the ideal business. Maybe there's a value add story here, but what I would really be focused on is just what is the market for the classic rents? Like the units in the condition they're in now, if you stabilize, that feels fine. And then the value add could be experimental on one turn, maybe do a slightly nicer turn and see if there's an appetite for it. But to underwrite this deal, trying to peg a class A rent, not a class A rent, but really trying to mark up the rent seems, I don't know, it feels kind of thin.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. There's so many buildings. I worked for a guy once who the kind of a Occam's razor type mentality of when looking at what should be done with a certain property, his question was always, well, what was it built as? So this was built as 2 levels of residential over retail. It's dense, dense, dense. If you see from that Google Earth photo, there are a ton of people living in this area.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of buildings in this area. So there are people. Every single one of them would prefer a roof over their head, I'm sure.
Sure.
So I do like it in these kinds of areas. Like, what does it cost not to, as opposed to value add, but, value achieve or value preserve even, get the place fixed up so that it's habitable. The only reason that it's 50% leased is the rent's too high.
Right.
One would assume. Get it habitable, figure out what in the hell is going on this ground floor with vacant mart or non-paying mart that's taken up the entire ground floor, and could be kind of a cool deal.
Yeah, I say often there's always a reason people want to live in your building, and it's usually price.
That's
so.
Yeah, and here and a lot of those places there just aren't people. Here we know there are a ton of people.
A ton of people, yeah.
And so getting in a building like this that's functional, accessible, visible, everything in a deal like this comes down to price.
Mm-hmm. So here's what I would really start to ask myself. We say this all the time. Do I fundamentally understand why people want to live in this submarket? And then do I understand why people want to live in this building? And I think the first question, if you're going to evaluate a value add beyond the value just being we are going to bring this to stabilization, if you think that, no, I'm going to try and do a value add and upgrade these unit interiors, you really have to be able to answer the first question of why do people want to live in this submarket? If you think it's a really desirable pocket, whether that's access to employment or there's some kind of lively retail or the school systems are really good, if you think that there's a stickiness to this market that would support a wide range of rents, then you could probably say, hey, maybe there is some merit to doing a value add. That it's not abundantly clear to me that there's a specific neighborhood driver here that separates it from other neighborhoods. I could be wrong, but just looking at the map. And so when you don't have a ton of those neighborhood drivers, then you have a lot of people who are really voting with their wallet. And so if you may have a ceiling on the rent, so if your value add strategy goes from a $1,200 one bed to a $1,500 one bed, the $1,500 one bed renter may be going to a completely different submarket. And you've got to know that before you start to underwrite it.
agreed.
The other thing about this photo is the graphics are presented in a way that about half of the ground floor is covered up.
Yeah.
And so it could be that's covering up something not to be seen, or it could be just coincidence. Oh, there you go.
How am I doing over here with the pictures?
And
you're killing
and
it.
Here's the other thing. Some of these signs, I mean, feels pretty grim. Some of those retail signs look like they were installed in the mid 60s, which gives you an idea of the vibrance of the neighborhood. And as opposed to residential space, apartments, there's a price at which all apartments will lease.
Agreed. So
retail is not the case.
Agreed.
And so there are these kind of spaces, oftentimes you can't find a tenant for it, or the tenant that you can get for it will cost you money for various reasons. Something like this, the value add may be getting that 100% vacant space back, and maybe there's an opportunity to convert some of this ground floor space to residential, at least to make it leasable.
So I realized the picture. I think I agree, Eric, and I think there's a reason I stopped on this picture. because I have no idea what this piece of equipment is right here, but it's interesting that they put it in some of the photos online. So here's where I'm going to show just how big of an idiot I am. What is this?
Yeah, here's some kind of, I don't know, 110, 120, whatever voltage.
I have no clue. But I would just also say that I bet it's 90 plus degrees in Chicago right now. And I'm not really sure what that is either because we don't have those in Florida, but I'm going to guess the air conditioning here isn't awesome.
The AC is window units. The heat is a radiator. And I'm guessing that thing you picture you stopped on before is the boiler.
Yeah, that seems plausible. Better than the guess.
It's not a thing you would have in Florida. You don't have A, basements, and B, boilers. So I don't fault you for not.
Okay. Well, gosh, that makes
you can nearly fully appreciate the mildew smell coming through these photos.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but some nice vinyl plank flooring. I mean, let's focus on the positive. Ceiling fan.
That was the value.
Well, so quick. I guess to kind of bring this back to quasi-serious conversation. Elliot, for you, how important is vintage of a deal at this point? Which I think goes back to a couple episodes. I guess the reason I'm asking this is about insurance.
I think less about it. Well, I think about insurance, but the first thing that I think about here is judging by the neighborhood. Eric's point about the quality of the retail tenants being indicative of what that neighborhood will support, and the current finish of the units, which I think is fine. There's no value add here that I can see. And I think your rents there's probably a ceiling, and that ceiling moves up over time with the rest of the market, but I don't think you're going to be able to punch through.
Right.
So to me, that just seems like kind of capped rental upside with currently unknown capital risk on the deferred maintenance side. That boiler appeared newish, but you'd really want to check the systems. You would need to see if your brick here needs to be repointed. You're going to have to check the roof. Like all of the things that could go horribly wrong, that's what I'd really be most, before I even got into insurance. In fact, it's probably not sprinklered. You probably got Zinsco panels in there. There's a whole list of things that could move against you. But large capital projects on a smaller deal like this can crush you because it's just too lumpy. The expenses will get you.
Also, just from appearances, looks like a terrific candidate for rent control. If there were such a thing here, and it might be an opportunity to have little to no upside and plenty of downside with property taxes and capped income.
Well, little to no upside and plenty of downside is often how I describe the affordable housing business. And it is capped rents with uncapped expenses. I think that's kind of what you have going on here. I think the value this, I'm going to look at whatever rent I'm going to get. Maybe it's $400 a month out of these spaces. I don't know how valuable that is, but there's clearly is going to need to be some TI and some cleaning up of those retail spaces if you want to improve the property overall. I'm going to say, can I continue to rent at the current rent? And what is the value minus the upfront capital that I know I need to put in it to sort of shore it up for the next 10, 15 years?
And all that to be said, having residential apartments in a, what's probably 100-year-old building, 80 to 100-year-old building, in a dense part of a major American city, if you could be a low-cost provider or close to it on residential rents, that's a nice place to sit. I think there's no question about demand here. So then it becomes all about pricing.
Brett, you bringing in a ringer?
I am. My best legal friend here, who is my best friend in the building.
It's
so
true.
Do you want to give a quick introduction? We've never introduced a guest midstream, but
yeah, I'm Jennifer.
No, I like it. Hi, Jennifer.
Nice to meet you.
It's kind of like Madonna. Jennifer doesn't have a last name.
I don't have a last name. I have to keep my anonymity.
Okay.
Got it.
Well, and
are there legal troubles?
That's great. Anonymity for real estate anonymous.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got an attorney, and I hear a siren.
No, I'm not an attorney. No, not an attorney. No, I'm an executive assistant. So I handle all the high up chiefs and directors.
You don't assist Brett, do you?
No.
No.
She would have been long
He's
gone.
not directable.
She's not. Yeah, right. She knows. All
Got
right.
it. That makes sense.
So Jen's going to opine here along the way. So again, I don't know if
Jen, do
Let's hear it.
you know Chicago?
I was born there.
well.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, here we go.
Is that what we're doing?
8250
Yeah, we're looking at a
South
deal.
Ave.
I I remember hearing about that from my parents.
So how is this location, Jen?
Oh gosh, I was 10 when I moved, y'all. So I don't know, but
well,
and everything changed so much.
Yeah, I was going to say y'all is a dead giveaway. You're no longer
I'm not from Chicago anymore now.
Yeah, you're not in Kansas anymore.
Got it.
All right.
Brett, I think what Eric and I were basically figuring out is this deal is probably not worth a whole lot.
No.
I think that's fair.
No, yeah. Well, that boiler costs a lot of money. I'm not sure what the return on investment is for that, but not good either.
Yeah, I think the things that you would normally do here to increase rent are not really options that are on the table for you. And so you just have to buy this with enough downside protection that the capital doesn't eat you alive. Yeah. And I think that's true for a lot of older multifamily in these types of markets. So this is not unique to this deal, but I'm sure it's not going to be priced that way.
Increasing, an option to, when you say increasing rents, what you're really saying is there an opportunity to increase desirability? So in some markets, you can change the physical product, and the building becomes more desirable. In this case, and people will therefore pay more money for it. In this case, it feels like that what would make this more desirable is to make it less expensive.
Well,
and therefore it's not a game about spending money. It's a game about saving cost and lowering price.
Yeah,
I mean the rents here are $850 a month. Like I don't even know where you could live anywhere in Orlando for $850 a month.
Well, but I think that was my earlier point. At $850, I think in this neighborhood people are voting with their wallet. I don't know that there's a big neighborhood driver that's going to keep you here. So if rent goes from $850 to $1050, that $850 renter is probably gone. And how confident are you there's a $1050 renter wanting to jump in behind them?
Not many if it's 50% occupied today at $850.
Yeah.
So the retail space, amusingly, is even less. $600 a month.
Yeah, I don't know how you could make a convenience store.
850 square feet.
I bet you could get a sweet haircut here if I think that's what that is. I'm thinking about getting a fade for the next episode.
I think you should.
I might.
I think that'd be a good look for you.
Thank you.
And how many necklaces do you currently own?
I'm gonna get some gold chains for next week too.
You should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can call me Two Chains, like the rapper.
Perfect.
Isn't that his name? I don't know.
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So what I like most about, there's a lot that I like about Chicago. A thing that I really enjoy about Chicago is a lot of what we know about affordable housing, or a lot of the current iterations of affordable housing, come from some of the earlier public housing projects that were in Chicago, mainly Cabrini Green and the Robert Taylor homes. These were two huge affordable housing projects in Chicago. If you think about affordable housing sort of evolved over time, this was at a time where they built mass public housing. And what they realized is that really intense concentration of poverty is cyclical in a really bad way. And it compounds. And when people don't see any opportunity around them, things get much, much worse. It's sort of synergistic in the wrong way. Mayor Jane Byrd, who was the mayor of Chicago at one point in time, she moved into Cabrini Green to try and prove that it was safe. And she made it about 2.5 weeks before snipers started firing at her from the roof. And she said, I'm out of here. There's a fantastic book by Ben Austin called High Risers that gets into the history of Cabrini Green, some of the history of Chicago, but also really talks about some of the lessons that we've learned about trying to provide affordable housing in the future and how some of these housing projects impacted that. So Chicago has a really interesting public housing history. There's many interesting things about Chicago, but real estate related, if you're at all interested, I'd say check out that book, High Risers. It's very good. It's super cool.
And this would be the counterpoint to that. So a small building, affordable, at a relative scale, low rents, and on the retail side, $600 a month for an 850 square foot space. You go a couple miles north, the other side of town, that size space on Oak Street, for example, would probably be 10 or 15,000 a month, if not more. And you can see that retail space could be, 10 or 15x the higher a higher price in a different neighborhood of Chicago. I don't think you would find that with residential, wouldn't have that sort of a volatility. But I think being able to provide housing in this part of town at the right price is something that's going to be quite sustainable. You just don't want to overpay for the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, let's talk returns here. Eric, assuming you've got some handle on the capital here, what kind of spread do you want above the 10-year on your return? Are you good at like a yield on cost that's 7 to 8?
Oh no, I think here it's because of knowing so little about this, and I think you'd have to put so much buffer in here with the potential capital, ongoing capital requirements of something like this. I'd have a hard time getting excited at something that wasn't yielding 15%.
To be clear, I also like deals that yield 15% out of the gate. So we're on the same page.
So the look on your face, Elliot, was incredible right there.
That's a nice yield. I don't know. I mean, maybe you could get that out of a mixed use deal here. I don't think anything in Chicago is going to trade at a day 115.
No.
Hold on. Wait a second. You guys were saying you wouldn't buy a brand new build for rent deal outside of Savannah for like a 50. You said you were like a 12 or 15.
All right, Eric, would you rather own this or that piece of shit that Moss pitched us a few weeks back out in Rincon, Georgia? This or BTR with no moat? This, right?
I'm sitting broad shoulders all day.
All day, 100%.
I'm gonna keep trying. I'm gonna keep shooting my shot.
Yeah, no, that's still today. Maybe that deal might be better than the trampoline park on our first pilot episode that we didn't get right. But in general, I still think this is a better bet than those homes in Rincon, Georgia. Those are still on the market, by the way.
Why don't you offer them a 15 cap?
And the big difference, you could never compete with it. You'd never want to, but you never could recreate this. Find a major corner in the city of Chicago where you can afford to build 3 stories like this out of this style and design. Can't be done. And especially at the price that we're talking about paying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does the OM list a price?
It does not.
It did say distressed.
It probably doesn't even cash flow right now.
No, but if you're at 800, what are the apartment rents? 800, 850? I mean, I'd be surprised if you're barely covering your expenses with that. There's like a minimum amount of dollars it costs to run a thing.
Right.
Yeah. That's why you're going to be waking up thinking about that boiler.
That boiler's sweet. That's the best part about this deal that I've seen. Looked expensive, but looked new.
This is always the problem that I have with these who do like single family home flips in the middle of goddamn nowhere in Iowa. Cause they're like, I bought this thing for 20 grand and now I rent it out for $451 a month and I have $180 in cash flow. It's like, yeah, dummy, but water heaters still cost $1,000. Like, what's your fucking plan once the water heater lets go? But whatever. You don't have to bother explaining math to those simpletons, but it's the same kind of thing here of like, there's probably just not enough margin to cover the unforeseen thing.
Well, Elliot, I mean, Girdley's not here this week, but that sounds like a super elitist comment to where do you need hot water for your showers? Like, it sounds like an elitist comment to me.
I'm a big cold shower guy now.
That's become a new thing, like a cold plunge. Yeah, wake you up.
Yeah, exactly.
So
in-unit cold plunges.
Yeah, right. Right. We've upgraded your unit to a full-time cold plunge. You can picture it as a health spa.
Yeah, it may not have enough scale, even full, that it because of the size of it that you may never outrun the operating expenses on this thing.
Yeah, the only way I think it works is if you live in the neighborhood, you're a guy with a truck, you own 2 or 3 other smaller 8-10 unit deals, you sort of manage this, you're the fix-it guy, like it can't support any type of payroll. Even still, boy, I think it's going to be tight. I am not a buyer. Even at a 15, because I just don't see how you get to a 15 here.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'm not doing a great job running math here, but let's just assume the total revenue is 200 grand. Let's say there's a 30% expense margin, and then you apply a 15% cap rate to that, this could be yours. This fine deal could be yours for $933,000.
No way it trades there. This is what, 20 units? 850 times 20. And then what do you got? Your retail too? 5 retail spaces?
Yeah.
So you got maybe 17,000. You said 20,000 a month and maybe in total rent?
But didn't they say 600 a month? Let's go back.
For the retail 600?
Yeah. Look.
So that's $3,000. And then you got 17.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So you're at about 20.
This deal just got more expensive with that extra retail.
Yeah. So you get 240, but there's I think it's going to cost you at least $6,500 or $7,000 a unit just to maintain. All
cost you your life.
Your taxes.
That's a big price to pay for this deal.
Yeah.
I'm not a buyer with my life.
Down that beauty supply shop.
Well, or we could maybe bring it back to a mirrored, Elliot's comment earlier about, a Airbnb thing with a mirrored table and some sort of poles. And just, what do we think to bring it home full circle?
I think in the rosiest of views, you can run this for $6,500 a door. So you've got $75,000 in NOI.
Until the tax man comes.
But in Chicago, you could pay him off or her off under Napoleonic law.
It's a real thing. You can pay them off, yeah. Alderman. Mm-hmm.
Jen's from Chicago, and she confirmed that comment that is doable.
You can get out of
Jen's paid many an alderman.
Not me.
Yeah, asking for
not me.
Yeah, I don't have a
speaking for others.
I don't have a drinking problem, but let's just say I have a friend that has a drinking problem. What would you suggest?
Jen's throwing a lot of comments in from the peanut gallery. We need to know: is she a buyer, or is she just back there cackling?
No, just definitely not a buyer. No.
Okay.
Hand her the bell. Hand her the bell.
No, she's not ringing the deal bell. There's no way she's a buyer.
She's not even willing to hold the bell. So that just tells you how much of a hard pass she is.
There's not enough stuff going on around the space. I mean, I think if you had more stuff going on around it, possibly.
Oh, there's plenty going on around it, I bet.
Yeah. There's a lot of,
but not the kind of stuff you want necessarily. But
there's a lot of street entrepreneur activity.
Is that what we're calling them now?
That's
street
correct.
entrepreneurs. Yeah.
A lot of.
I will say, with all due love and respect to the great city of Chicago, there's no chance I'd pay even $1 for this. I think you're just inheriting a liability.
Agreed.
There we have it.
Other
the city of broad shoulders.
Less painful ways to make a living.
So, and sorry to the audience for the fact that nobody's ringing the closing bell on this deal, but fortunately we got to ring it with Elliot's idea earlier.
My Airbnb idea of really destroying a neighborhood.
We are going to ring it for Elliot's original idea. Buyer.
Yeah, everyone's in for that one.
Yes, 100% in as a very silent partner.
All right, I think we've reached the natural conclusion of this one. You guys get anything before we wrap up?
That's the bod.
All right.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks,
nice
guys.
meeting you.